Welcome to the video, everyone. It's your favorite Jiu-Jitsu guy. In case you don't already know, Gordon Ryan has gone off on Nikki Rod. Now, before you head to the comments to tell me that this is old news, because if you're watching this the day it dropped, it's been like 3 or 4 days since this all broke out, but I was trying to delay making this as much as I could to give Nikki Rod a chance to respond to Gordon's response. Did he? You'll have to keep watching and find out in a few minutes. And you can still go to the comments and say that if you want, since bad comments or good comments, they all help me beat the algorithm monster, so have at it. But Gordon Ryan and Nikki Rod are former teammates and Danaher Death Squad members, and they have potentially given us grappling's next huge feud. But is that good for Jiu-Jitsu? Which of these two guys is right? I'm going to give you the backstory, what happened between them, all the ways that Gordon is right, all of the ways that Gordon is wrong, plus all of the ways Nikki Rod is right, and all of the ways that Nikki Rod is wrong. Let's dive into it. Way back in a distant time called the 90s, a fella named John Danaher moved from New Zealand to New York. He started training Jiu-Jitsu under Renzo Gracie, and he quickly became one of the best coaches in the sport. Somewhere around 2010 or 2011, John Danaher took over the morning classes at Renzo's, and a certain Eddie Cummings started training at the school. Between John and Eddie developing their now infamous leg lock system, and they were adding in extremely talented grapplers like Gary Tonin, the team started to dominate no-gi competition. It was at about this time that EBI started, and Eddie and Gary basically won everything they entered using this, at the time, newfangled leg lock system. And just as a personal side note, in case you're watching, or if not, maybe someone will send this to you, please come back to Jiu-Jitsu, Eddie Cummings. We all miss you. This success drew in even more talented grapplers like a Mr. Gordon Ryan and then his younger brother Nicky Rod. In the mid-2010s, the team was known as the Danaher Death Squad and had grown to include the people that I previously mentioned, but also Craig Jones, Ethan Krelenstein, and you guessed it, Nick Rodriguez, aka Nikki Rod. Nikki Rod had been barely training for a year when he took second place at ADCC, and everyone was taking notice of how insanely good this wrestler with 1 year of jiu-jitsu experience was getting. Plus, he looked like he was carved from stone, and that's always helpful in the marketability. In late 2020, there was a bit of a shockwave in the jiu-jitsu world when it was announced that the Death Squad was moving from Renzo's school in New York, and they were going to all move to Puerto Rico. The goal was to make a training camp where the best grapplers from all over the world could come and train in a basically tropical paradise. They even had a series on Flow Grappling that was following them around and documenting their travel / training / exploits. It was all short-lived though, as just a few months in, the team broke up sort of out of the blue. They were all going to leave Puerto Rico, but the story got a lot weirder. First, Gordon announced that he was moving to Austin, Texas, and would open a school there with John Danaher. So everyone is thinking, okay, the whole team is moving. Are some of them going back to Renzo's or their original schools? Are they all going to Austin? Well, then it was announced that Craig Jones, Nikki Rod, and Gordon Ryan's brother, Nicky Ryan, would be also moving to Austin, but to open a different school, and they would not be with Gordon. So they were all moving to Austin, but they were not moving together or training together. We ended up with Gordon and John starting New Wave Jiu-Jitsu, which is still a work in progress, and they are teaching currently out of Renzo Gracie Austin while the school is being built, and Nikki Rod and company started B-Team. The schools are like 20-ish minutes away, but they are not friendly. No one really knew why the breakup happened, and there were lots of rumors, and it definitely seemed odd that especially two brothers would split like that. Everything was hush-hush, but there were little subtle things that would come out when people would talk about like a toxic environment or potential preferential treatment. At ADCC 2022 this past fall, Nikki Rod and Gordon Ryan faced each other in the finals, and Gordon won in pretty decisive fashion. Then a few months later on Fight Pass, Nikki Rod stepped in on short notice, and Gordon and Nikki had a rematch, and it was much closer. Nikki even broke Gordon's foot in a toe hold, but Gordon won in overtime. After that match, though, Gordon accused Nikki Rod of using lotion and greasing.
And I've trained with him many times, and he's often very slippery. The second he started sweating, and he was definitely lotion.
And that's the whole backstory. That is what led up to this week. On Mark Bell's Power Podcast, Nikki Rod said this.
His biggest thing is steroids. You wouldn't be half the thing, the person you were if you didn't do that. You have somebody that preaches, oh, technique is king, and then why you're trying to be so strong. Wouldn't have even said that if he didn't go after our match, be like, oh, this guy's fucking greasing. On top of that, I'm a natural athlete going against an enhanced athlete, and you still need excuses.
Credit to BJJ World TV for pulling that clip and captioning that. You should be following them on Instagram if you are not already. Let's look at each thing Nikki Rod said and what was right and what was wrong.
His biggest thing is steroids.
I mean, allegedly, Gordon is not a natural athlete. I'm not trying to get sued. I don't think I'm breaking any news when I say that a lot of people think he is enhanced, but to say his biggest thing is steroids is, I think, incorrect. Gordon's technique and his approach and his strategy are all impeccable. Would the juice help him if he was on it? Yes, of course. That's why almost every high-level jiu-jitsu athlete is on steroids, allegedly. But if you took every single competitor off steroids, Gordon would still be the king of the mountain right now.
You wouldn't be half the thing, the person you were if you didn't do that.
Again, disagree, but I do think if Gordon was a clean athlete competing against non-clean athletes, he wouldn't have the incredible winning streak that he does right now, but I think he'd still be a lot more than half the person he currently is.
You have somebody that preaches, oh, technique is king, and then why you're trying to be so strong.
Technique is king, but when everyone is strong and has killer technique, you can't just have technique. You need to be strong too, and I'm not saying it's right. I'd prefer my jiu-jitsu competition to be steroid-free, but that's why people are focused on strength. Everyone else is focused on strength.
Wouldn't have even said that if he didn't go after our match, be like, oh, this guy's fucking greasing.
That's fair. The door was slightly open for shit talk by Gordon when he definitely made accusations against Nicky Rod that if they are true or aren't true, you'd be pretty pissed to hear someone saying that about you. Imagine you go out and have a good performance against the best guy in the world and he accuses you of cheating. If you didn't do that, you'd be pissed, but if you did do that and got your spot blown up, you'd probably retaliate too. Last but not least, he says,
on top of that, I'm a natural athlete going against an enhanced athlete, and you still need excuses.
Can you achieve the same physique as Nicky Rod without steroids? Yes, probably for less than 5% of people on Earth, but it still is possible. Can you achieve that physique while also competing and training in an explosive and cardiovascularly demanding sport like jiu-jitsu and have enough ability to recover from both jiu-jitsu and heavy lifting? I have my doubts. I'm not saying he's clean. I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying that is a bold claim for someone with that physique to make. Let me know in the comments whether you think Nicky Rod is natural or not. Now, as you might expect, Gordon had a very intense reply to what Nicky Rod said. After this clip started going around, Gordon Ryan quickly responded and it was a deluge of memes. He made an Instagram post that was very long and I'll hit the highlights, and just like I did with Nicky Rod's comments, I'll tell you where I think Gordon is right and where he is wrong. He also posted about 1,000 memes. And I'm not going to go through every single one of those because that's a very boring video and I'd like for you to keep watching and not click off. And maybe you can subscribe too if you haven't already. Here are some of the main claims and statements from Gordon's original post. Between 2019 and 2022, Nicky has a losing record. This is a verifiable fact, something Gordon points out in his post. Not much to be right or wrong about there. That's what it is. Nicky made people believe he was good by highlight reeling his blue belt students. Listen, Instagram is Instagram. As someone who posts a lot of training footage myself, which you're of course following me on Instagram, correct? I don't think Nicky Rod is going out of his way to beat up on blue belts just for content. Plus, Nicky Rod does have competition wins over the most recent ADCC absolute champion, Yuri Simoes. He's got wins over Kyle Bohm, Cyborg, Orlando Sanchez, Muhammad Ali. So yeah, he's good. He just is good. We'll call this statement from Gordon not really true. Gordon claims he saw him greasing multiple times. If that's true, then that's a pretty huge thing. Greasing before jiu-jitsu competition is one of the biggest ways you'd cheat, so that's a very heavy accusation. I'm in no place to say whether that's true or not, obviously, so we'll have to leave that one as questionable. Gordon claims that Nicky's body lock passing system is a ripoff of Gordon and John's body lock system. This is something with instructionals where I think it's sort of muddy waters. Like, how unique does a technique have to be for you to claim it as your own? If you put out a closed guard instructional and one of the things you show is an armbar from closed guard, are you ripping off the first person to ever do a closed guard armbar? How many unique details do you need to include before it's officially your way of doing it? It's the same thing with the body lock stuff. How much can one person claim ownership of a common position? Plus, with Gordon and John's leg lock system, no one says Gordon is ripping off Eddie Cummings, who you could say was an integral part in the Danaher Death Squad's development of that system. Is Gordon right to say that he showed Nicky body lock stuff? Yeah, he probably did. Is it accurate to say that Nikki Rod ripped off Gordon's stuff and is claiming it as his own? I honestly don't know how you'd approach that. Where does ownership start, end, or get transferred? Let me know in the comments what you think. Lastly, Gordon claims that Nicky is not natural like he says he is. So sort of like I talked about a few minutes ago, it's hard for me to adamantly defend Nikki Rod when he looks and trains and performs the way he does. If he is natural, then the biggest compliment I can give him is it sure doesn't seem like it, but is that enough for me to say for sure that he's not? I have my doubts, but I don't think I can go past doubts. I did hope to include a section right here all about Nicky's response to Gordon's response, but at the time of this recording, there have been zero reply from Nikki Rod. I'm sure the second I publish this video, he will respond and I'll have to make a follow-up, so please make sure that you're subscribed. That way, if I do have to make a follow-up, you don't miss it. I think some people would view this as an unnecessary drama between two grown men who compete in a sport that 98% of the rest of the world doesn't care about. I am not one of those people. I think a very public, very heated rivalry is good for professional jiu-jitsu. Let's just, side note, take a look at the 10 highest grossing pay-per-views in the UFC since the sports are parallel and I have access to those numbers. Number 1, Conor vs. Khabib, obvious rivalry. Number 2, Conor vs. Poirier 2, not a rivalry at the time. Conor vs. Diaz 2, rivalry. Conor vs. Poirier 3, rivalry. Conor vs. Cowboy, not a rivalry. Conor vs. Diaz 1, rivalry. Usman vs. Masvidal, rivalry. Conor vs. Alvarez, rivalry. Mir vs. Lesnar, rivalry. Conor vs. Aldo, my absolute favorite rivalry in the history of the UFC. We can see from this list a few things. Number 1, this Conor McGregor fella sure sells a lot of pay-per-views, but number 2, of the top 10 best-selling UFC pay-per-views, 8 of them were headlined by people who did not like each other. There's a reason for that. In combat sports, if there's an element of hatred between participants, then people will be more interested in it. I have always been a proponent of growing jiu-jitsu and having more mainstream eyes on the sport. The way to do that is to get these athletes more attention and make these events more fan-friendly. A heated rivalry is obviously a good way to boost sales and drive more attention to professional jiu-jitsu. Let me know in the comments if you want to have some beef so that we can all get more famous via arguing in public. But from a competition standpoint, I think we do need something to keep our interest in Gordon. I know that's a weird thing to say, but he's about to compete against Felipe Pena again, and I'm not getting the vibe that people are really pumped for it. Even though Gordon has beaten Nikki Rod twice already, another matchup between them would be compelling because of all of this and how close their last match was. I think people being excited for a Gordon Ryan match is something that professional jiu-jitsu needs. So that's where we are so far in the War of the Words. I'm assuming there's more to this spat coming, and honestly, I'm excited to see where this goes and if we can't get another match between these two. Whose side am I on? I'm not really sure. I think they both have good points and they both have things they're wrong about, but it just seems like the volume of response from Gordon, he's getting the better of Nicky a little bit. Let me know in the comments whose side you're on and what you think about this whole back and forth. Thank you all for watching, especially if you're still here watching all the way to the end. You are a legend. I have a lot in the works for you, so please make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned, and I will see you all in the next one.